Almaz. Well, inspiration comes from the craziest places sometimes. When I was pregnant with my son, I was so sick that I couldn't eat much, but the one thing that sounded really good to me was ginger cookies. And so there was a time when I was staying with my sister-in-law, who at the time was a chef, very talented, and I found a ginger cookie in her freezer that pretty much to me tasted like the platonic ideal of a ginger cookie. And this is great. We have our doula here in the audience. This is actually really fabulous. I don't know if you know this story. And it was a great cookie. Until I started hallucinating and seeing my life flash before my eyes. It took me a visit to the ER to realize that I had accidentally gotten myself very, very high. It turns out that when you eat an industrial strength pot cookie made with clarified pot butter, you can't taste the pot at all, for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing. You don't just get paranoid, you get certain that you're gonna die. Or at least I do. No, don't worry, my son is 7 now, he's fine. But that seed of a story, that moment when I thought I was gonna die, sat with me for years. And it eventually grew into what has now become my novel in progress, which I'm going to share a scene from for the first time ever in public tonight. And this is, I don't typically write memoir, but this is about as close to memoir as anything that I've written. But what often happens to me when I take moments from my own life and put them into fiction is they kind of sprout a life of their own. So, you know, in the beginning it was my husband and me, but very soon in the process of writing, these people became wholly different people with their own lives and their own histories and their own problems. And so what you're hearing tonight, I'm sorry, it's not funny at all, but I think it might be sort of interesting to know that's the seed that it came from. So this is what I think is the first chapter of a book called The Bridge Between Us. 1. Marriage is a river that leaves you reaching again and again for the very person who threw you overboard. 2. We've been stateside 4 days, long enough to confirm that I am pregnant, when I get up from the couch, shuffle over to the screen door, and feel the sunlight shatter. It's a black I can see through, like viewing memories on an old projector. The doctor's pinched forehead when he delivers the diagnosis, my husband's uncertain hand on my waist, the manila tarpon metal shacks that wallpapered the last year of our lives. Then it's over. A neighbor's lawnmower roars to life. A child sings a wordless jingle at the park next door. I crouch on the floor, gripping the door frame. My vision bubbles of glass. Alan is in the backyard, enjoying the pure goldenrod summertime we'd almost forgotten during our year of sun-slanted pollution and broiling heat. Pink wine glistens in his glass. You should come out here, he says, glancing up from the Tom Clancy novel he's rereading. From the beginning, it was his mind that captured me most. But underneath his fascination for Plato and Potok is a weakness for mass-market paperbacks that I've never understood. It took me a decade of marriage to accept that you can love a person completely and yet be wholly unaware of what is really inside. Something's wrong, I say when he looks back at his book. The conversation is painfully familiar, but this time is different. I think it's the baby. 3. The night we arrived here, Alan's brother, on his one night off, opened 3 different bottles of wine and made the kind of meal that could only come from a professional. Tender slabs of salmon, a salad abundant with warm goat cheese, figs, and candied pecans, a spread of summer's finest vegetables grilled to perfection. I was too nauseous to eat, but he was adamant that we celebrate. Sitting there before our feast, I had the same sensation as when we stepped off the plane in San Francisco. All of it, the cool gray fog, the terraced Victorians overlooking the bay, the quiet politeness of strangers, felt unreal. It was a life that for an entire year had been a far-off fantasy. And yet, coming home was bittersweet. As we lingered over each exquisite bite, I saw that Already we were losing the bitter. The other life, the one that saved us, was slipping away. 4. Alan walks me inside and gets me a glass of water. He rummages through the freezer as if the answer to my unease might be found among frozen containers of duck fat and demi-glace. He settles on the same ginger cookies I sampled an hour earlier and then takes a seat beside me at the dining room table. I can see him preparing for the inevitable ER visit, for the medical bills that will take months to pay off. I look for proof of his resentment, but all I see is the usual unruffled calm. Then the light goes out again. With darkness comes clarity. I am dying. It's not the first time I felt this, but it's the first time I've been certain. This time it's not just about me. I'm sure this is normal pregnancy stuff, Alan says. He's almost laughing. Nothing is ever a big deal with him. We spent a whole year in the Philippines trying to uncover all that lay beneath this particular point of tension and nearly lost each other in the process. He still claims that I have a flair for the dramatic, but this time he's wrong. 5. Our first week in Manila, I awoke in the middle of the night with soul-scraping chest pain, and Alan refused to take me to the ER. My husband is not cruel or uncaring. When the doctor said that there was no cure for multiple sclerosis, nothing to do but manage the deterioration and pain, Alan had sat there holding my hand. For 6 years, he'd shuttled me to the ER so often that we'd had to cancel vacations and put off home repairs. But on that night, in a new time zone with dogs barking and roosters crowing, he rolled over in bed instead of getting dressed. The next morning, after I returned from the hospital and told him it was another panic attack, not the cardiac arrest I'd feared, he was visibly vindicated. All at once, I saw the ugliness that had been brewing beneath his sympathy. I didn't know then that what I saw was only the surface, that there was a whole life I'd never guessed at under that mask. 6. We drive past the town square and wine country tourists, and at last come to the hospital, a squat building with a parking lot as empty as a New Year's Day hangover. The waiting room is the usual fluorescent lighting, gray-white walls, and smell of antiseptic and mop water. While Alan fills out the form the receptionist pushes past the counter, I sit across from the kid with an ice pack pressed to his jaw and a woman, presumably his mother, sitting beside him reading Martha Stewart Living. A woman in blue scrubs calls my name, and we follow her to a windowless room down the hall. The exam table sanitary cover crinkles and sticks to the back of my legs. The nurse makes notes on a clipboard and asks questions I find difficult to answer. Alan makes a joke about me needing the oxygen tank in the corner. Someone told us that living in Manila was equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. The nurse smiles politely but doesn't laugh. The doctor comes in and shines a light in my mouth and checks my pulse. There's a dull throbbing beneath my temples that won't lift. I feel like I'm in a dream, I say, like I can't wake up. The doctor says that my vital signs are normal, but between the pregnancy, my MS, and where we've been living, there are reasons to be concerned. He does not name those reasons, but I know them. Typhoid, meningitis, hepatitis. He wants to do some tests, he says, and leaves the room. I close my eyes and try to breathe. I can hear nurses chatting in the hallway, just another slow Thursday afternoon. One of them comes in and pokes a syringe into my arm. I wonder what will show up in the blackish red of my blood. The street food we consume daily, the tubercular women I held in my arms, the visit we paid to a friend with dengue fever. I imagine the life we created, its tiny tadpole body fighting off every chance I took. Alan takes my hand. How are you feeling? Strange, scared. I don't cry. I want to be braver than that. The ache behind my forehead is still there. I feel sick at the thought of losing this person who is not yet a person who will define me in a way few things in my life have. But my hand in his helps. And for a moment I think about all that we've been through, and I think maybe we'll get through this too. 7. The morning after the ER incident in Manila, we went on our first home visit with the NGO where we'd be volunteering all year. We took a jeepney across town, the roar of motor and Bon Jovi in our ears. At a sidewalk market, a skinned goat hung bloodlessly, and we were assaulted by the scent of durian, pungent as rotting flesh. We walked down one nameless street after another. Then the wind changed. The sun sliced through the cloud cover, and the smell of cooked garbage engulfed us. We rounded another corner and caught our first glimpse of the Payatas garbage dump. Next to the giant mountain of trash was a small shack made of concrete blocks and corrugated metal. Inside, a woman with a baby in her arms urged us to sit on the overturned crates she had as chairs. In the corner of the room, a single blanket was spread on the cement floor. There was no bed, no table, no bathroom. The baby had snot crusted between his nose and mouth, but he was laughing, his mouth opened wide in baby glee. His mother pressed a kiss onto his head and asked me if I wanted to hold him. It was a question I dreaded. I didn't know what to do with babies, was lacking some essential motherly chromosome, but I took the child anyway. He immediately began to cry. Perhaps it was the heat, or the jet lag, or the night in the ER, or the smell of the dump, or the thing we had fought about that morning, me expressing my fear that we'd never be parents, or that maybe we shouldn't be, when all along, I only wanted to hear Alan say that I would be a good mother. My legs suddenly failed me. I pushed the baby back into his mother's arms and reached for Alan. His glance was harsh, scolding, but then he saw what was happening and put his hand on my waist and steadied me just in time.